enough of the history. We're into the present day once again, on to Summoner's Rift very soon for these games. FlyQuest Academy, CLG Academy. It's going to be good because of the fact that these teams now have the opportunity to adapt to what they expected last time. Like you were talking about, Mark, the mind games will be fun.
And we saw the same draft thus far. Does the early game strategy stay the same? Once again, FlyQuest Academy grouping up for that early invade. Looks like at least portions of this game will go very similar.
Well, we got the ward down. That's the first
step
step for
complete.
FlyQuest. Now, step 2 for FlyQuest is hope that MarkZ does a greedy path again. I don't know if they'll be able to control that step because it is mostly up to MarkZ himself, but we'll see.
Right, and I mean, you could definitely really mix things up if you want. Like, as you see MarkZ here kind of dancing back and forth, not sure where to start. Maybe overthinking.
Wait, do I go red? Do I go blue?
Yeah, well, maybe overthinking it a little bit now. But we'll actually be starting on Wolves.
On the Wolf Camp. All right. So that's where MarkZ's going to begin things this time around. First Drake, by the way. I don't know if you guys spammed it or not. I can't see Twitch chat while we're doing games. But if you did, I appreciate you. Because look on your screen right now. That is a beautiful emblem to see on the wall. Infernal, first and foremost.
Got a question for you. If you remake a game, do you guarantee get the same dragons?
I actually have no idea.
I don't think you do.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's a thing where as soon as the champion select ends and the game launches, it's like the dragons are hard stuck in there, or if they just RNG them.
Well, it's a new game ID, right? So you would think.
I don't know this technical stuff.
Sorry, I'll not quiz you on that.
This is not my forte, Mark. My job is to talk about the game.
So what are the variables that you're passing between the client of the?
Oh yeah, something with packets and.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're talking about, but what we should be talking about right now is this matchup here in the mid lane, because last time around, we saw so much action exploding around these two players, right?
Yep, similar path as well this time. MarkZ has skipped the Scuttle Crab, but still did a full bot side clear, and this time working his way up to the top side. Looks like he wants to get that early ward down to potentially spot out this invade. Early game so far has been nearly identical. Smite fight.
Smite fight. Are they actually going to smite fight over it?
No smite
Shrimp's the one who's in some trouble here, and it's MarkZ who gets himself that Scuttle Crab. Very different story being told early on in the jungle.
Yeah, no smites available, and MarkZ's able to secure that one, and it deters Shrimp's invade. So already, like you said, totally different game. Butterfly effect, totally going crazy. Now Tuesday has his heal. Maybe he doesn't have to play as defensively into Keen. Who knows where we go from here?
A lot of different ways it could all play out, a lot of similar ways it could play out as well. And remember, as your camera was on the bottom lane there for a moment, Braum, and initiating onto him was one thing that we heavily criticized CLG for. I want to see how they pick their targets here in round 2 as well.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. You know, he wants to jump in front of things. That's what his champion does. So you tend to hit him more than you may intentionally want to. But there's also times where they're clearly opening up onto him. And I think that's the kind of stuff they need to be more careful about. That river fight. Yeah, shoot some abilities at him. Don't let him walk up for free, but maybe don't blow multiple ults on that target.
Right, makes things a little bit difficult, but No will continue pushing up in the top side here, shoving Fallen Bandit underneath the turret. Again, there's not really the consequence for this there was in the previous game because MarkZ's not under pressure. So Cho'Gath will just be able to farm up underneath the turret. Not super concerned about this overall. Might drop a little bit behind the Gnar in terms of CS overall, but it's nothing that he's going to write home about and actually see as a legitimate concern. Shrimp continues farming up on the bottom side of the map. And what I'm also curious about is we talked about why FlyQuest's wins were impressive and why this team looked like they were one of the better Academy teams because they were able to minimize losses and they were able to make smart decisions and work together as a team. Now I want to see one of the trademarks that we often see even many LCS teams struggle with. Adaptation. This is technically not a best of series, but you got to play 20 minutes of the first game and see how your opponents did. This is your opportunity to react to that with the same comps even and potentially change something up. I want to see how FlyQuest, as the #1 team in Academy, adapts.
And that's the tough part, being that your strategy was working. So it feels weird to tell yourself, well, we got to adapt now. But at the same time, you do kind of need to, because CLG is definitely going to adapt. They're not going to go like, yeah, let's fall down 5K gold again at
do the same thing, guys.
Yeah, you already see them adapting. They protected the top side of their jungle a lot better. And so, you know, FlyQuest will need to find at least some differences. I think, you know, great vision control around the bot lane, which allows you to get a free Infernal Dragon at 10 minutes. yeah, that's a repeatable strategy. Keep going for that one. But there are other elements that might not work out as well, like we already said with that early invade.
You're not adapting to change your own successes. You're adapting to the adaptation of your opponent's failures.
Exactly. So you don't want to go and just go for the same blind strategy and have them like camping a brush ready for it. But at the same time, you do need to find some different things to do. And with that Galio Jarvan Gnar combo that we saw, like there's a lot of different ways that this game can go. There were some skirmishes up around the top side, around that blue buff invade that CLG tried to answer. Maybe CLG doesn't go for that blue buff invade now, but maybe FlyQuest can instead go for a really coordinated 3-man dive on the Cho'Gath if they're able to chunk him out a little bit. There's so many different ways that FlyQuest can play this early game out now. We'll just have to see what they choose to go with.
Absolutely. CLG also, plenty of different options for them to choose how to play these things. You can see no super early Drake attempt. It was a little bit after this last time that the Drake was attempted by FlyQuest. OmarGod hanging out here in the top side as we go to the wide cam to see just how far back he is. Maybe if No wants to, yeah, exactly, the slingshot cam. Maybe if No wants to initiate onto that Cho'Gath, but he is not going to be taking that bait. There's just too many minions alone that makes that an unenticing situation. Sends OmarGod back into the jungle, but
I did feel like Shrimp was at least kind of aware of that pressure, was hovering up in that river before recalling out. Just wanted to make sure that they didn't try and do anything with that big wave. That's one of the most important things as a top laner and any really side laner is to communicate when a big wave is coming into, because those are the power play back-breaking moments that people try to explode games off of. With that additional minion wave, you know the enemy wants to stick around to collect that gold. You also know that if you successfully kill them, you now have a wave to push with. So playing around those big minion waves is one of the most important things you can do. Even in solo queue, you know, if you feel like you see a big wave coming in and you're sitting on your turret ready to collect it and there's some missing people, spam that assist me ping.
I also like seeing the vision being used with the Ashe Hawk shot. That's one part of that champion that can go a long way. Keeping track of Shrimp as he gets his second red buff. Now Keen flashing away there from OmarGod, utilizing the Let's Bounce to force that summoner spell out of the enemy mid laner, and that might open up the opportunity to make more plays here in the future, but probably going to want Omar to have the ulti up again before you go for that.
Right, Keen on the Galio is going to be a pretty tough opponent to kill in the mid lane, but they do have enough CC that it could work. If Phil finds an opportunity to roam, Auto sends an arrow, you start things off with a Orianna ult, potentially you can find a way to find the kill onto what is normally an impenetrable Galio.
Blue buff will be given away to Tuesday. OmarGod doesn't really have a lot of use for that as Zach, so happy to donate that one over towards his mid laner. Give him a little bit more control over what's happening here in mid against that early pushing power from the Galio that we talked about earlier. OmarGod clearing out some of the vision. You can see CLG making sure they're paying attention to the bottom part of the river this time.
Such a different game already. And if it's FlyQuest, you just got to put the previous game in the back of your mind. At this point, just pretend it didn't happen. You are in such a different game at this point. It's not worth saying like, you know, we were killing them before. We were up 1,000 gold and we had some kills and we had an Infernal Dragon at this point in the game. Well, you're not there anymore. It's hard to do, but you need to forget about that and think about what you can do now.
Right, I understand exactly how frustrating a situation like that can be when you were in such a dominant position, but at the same time, focusing on that doesn't win this game.
Nope.
That does not give you any sort of an edge in this one. So for FlyQuest, it's all about shifting that mental, making sure that you're dealing with the task at hand, and finding the opportunity to set those plays up in a different environment. Ward placed down, OmarGod secures his red with the smite just to make sure, recognizing that the enemy top laner was missing, so he wanted to make sure he doesn't accidentally give that red buff over to the Gnar, because that would be pretty unfortunate for Cho'Gath.
That would lead to a very angry top laner. They did have the vision toggle going on there, so I was like, is No still there, but he just dropped a ward and then took the blast cone over the wall to get out. Just playing defensively for himself, so he feels confident to keep pressuring this matchup. Has a decent CS lead right now. There's a bit of a wave going in, so I'm sure Fallen Bandit will catch up a little bit, but is a big part of that 500 gold advantage that we see in the game right now.
Now, jungle enchants are completed for both of these junglers. You've got your Chilling Smite with Cinderhulk, the team player approach from OmarGod. Once again, though, Skirmisher Saber with Warrior, more of that, I'm going to do all the damage myself, blast these guys down, build coming out from Shrimp, that really aggro Jarvan that you mentioned at the closure of the last game. So both these guys have plenty of playmaking opportunity now. have to see where they decide to focus. I would imagine it would be towards the bottom half, with the Infernal Drake being a potential reward there. Also with level 6 being online pretty much across the board at this point in time. You know you can go anywhere and look to make a play.
I wouldn't mind seeing FlyQuest willing to sack the bot lane Infernal Dragon if they can make a big play top. I think that's one of those times where you're fine with that trade-off. If you kill the Cho'Gath, you take the turret, Gnar suddenly becomes a split push concern. That puts you in a good position later in the game, especially with the Elder Dragon, or the Infernal Dragon respawns, and now you have split push pressure. But CLG will actually be the one starting this off. This is Envision, so we'll finally get that fight.
All right, first fight for the Infernal Drake. Stun down onto the Braum, gonna be knocked back with the Pulverize. Can they do anything here? Instead, it's gonna be Shockwave finding its way only onto Keen. Taunt lands onto the CLG lines. MarkZ gonna be taken low. The Alistar tanking a lot, but still has the ulti available. Shrimp making the dunk, flashing right back out, keeping himself alive. First blood over to CLG. Tuesday collects that one, and the TPs come in from behind. It's Fallen Bandit making his way into this one first. Unlike last time, Keen's still gonna be stuck. A double for Tuesday. It's 3 for CLG.
And a completely different game here early on.
Wow.
CLG find 3 kills off that Dragon fight. Like we were saying last game, which we hadn't really updated, these are very, very even team comps, and it will most likely come down to execution in this early game. It looked a little sketchy for CLG. They start off the fight on their favorite target, Braum, once again, and the fight is not going in their favor. But both top laners were heavily skirmishing up in the top lane, so no one's able to collapse down right away. And the Zac and Alistar just provides a better front line at this part of the game. So even though they are able to drop him down, the Orianna ult doesn't quite hit all the right targets. At this point, the fact that the Alistar is able to tank up as much damage as he is right now is huge. And then they get the Shrimp, gets to kind of trade his life for the passive of Zac, but that's not a good trade. And then the TPs finally come in, but the fight's mostly already won. Keen decides to go in to try and find some more damage, but no one's able to follow up on him as Fallen Bandit has cut off the back line. And there you go, 3 for 0 and an Infernal Dragon. 1,500 gold lead for CLG. Really different game.
So now, by the way, worth pointing out, the Drakes are not the same as last time. Mountain's coming up number 2 instead of Infernal Drake number 2, so little bit bummed about that one, but you got to be excited if you're CLG, because what did we criticize their Infernal Drake fight for last game when they went 0 for 3 instead of 3 for 0? Fallen Bandit, no TP. This time around, Fallen Bandit's the one who arrives just a second earlier and ends up making the cutoff that lets them find that fight.
Absolutely. So it's the fact that they were able to focus down the right targets. Like we said, JJ got jumped on there, but they were not committed to finishing him off, and they refocused Shrimp down when he ended up going in to pop MarkZ. And that's like what we were saying, you know, playing Jarvan from an even situation with a Red Smite and Warrior upgrade is pretty tough to do sometimes.
It can feel pretty bad. You end up being very, very vulnerable once you go in. You saw, even in that team fight, when Shrimp had to go in, use the Cataclysm to trap them and immediately flash out of his own ulti, because he would have died. So from that... Still died,
yeah.
But would have died a lot faster. It puts you in a situation where you feel much better about the state of the game as MarkZ building tank, being this big front line for your team, because now you know you've got some damage threats. You've got a team that's got themselves a gold lead of around about 1,000 gold.
And it's a gold lead that might shrink in a second here, just because we saw that Rift Herald go over to Shrimp yet again, clearly prioritizing that objective. And last time it was used to grab a turret. It's going to try and do the same thing this time. Might try and kill Tuesday. Maybe they've done a good job tracking his summoners, and they know that they have the summoner advantage to pick this fight, but MarkZ is covering him.
MarkZ going in here onto Keen, looking to get the kidnap. There you go, lands that time. Keen decided to go forward, flash into the taunt, Justice Punch, Winds of War. Shrimp is here, makes the dunk, can't quite get the damage. Tuesday will make it a 1-for-1, but now Keen in some trouble, trying to retreat. MarkZ grabbing the kill onto him. Back up here from Phil. No, won't find anything else. That's still 2-for-1, CLG.
2-for-1. CLG makes the first move on that attempt. And then FlyQuest try and answer back, but the Orianna and Zac are pretty tanky. It's hard to finally finish them off with all the shields that they're able to pick up. So you see them kick it off on the Keen. Keen knows that they want to turn this. Tuesday's trying to space it, but gets flash taunted, then knock up. The EQ from Shrimp comes in, but Tuesday sidesteps it. And even though he still gets the ultimate off for the damage, it pulls him back, so it takes a little bit longer to finish off Keen there. Or, excuse me, Tuesday. It allows them to finish off Keen. and then both people start collapsing again, and everyone disengages. So 1 for 2, CLG in the mid lane.
From 0 to 5 to 5 and 1, CLG have made those adaptations that we were talking about. How are you going to play this game differently? What mistakes are you going to recognize and correct coming into the second round of this game? CLG are playing it well for themselves. 5 out of 5 kill participation on Tuesday there in the mid lane. And honestly, 4 out of 5 kill participation for Zach, for Ash, for Alistar. This team is working together as a unit.
Yeah, they're doing a great job thus far. A lot more focus around the bot lane and ready for these skirmishes when they break out. I think that was a big problem for them before, was that they were kind of a step behind FlyQuest, it felt like, the entire game, where, oh, there's a fight in the top lane because we went for a blue buff and they collapsed on us. Oh, both teams want to contest Dragon, but they have their TP up and we don't. This time, they're the aggressors in a lot of these situations, and they're taking the fights on their terms.
Now, one thing I do want to mention, though, last time around we saw FlyQuest sitting with a 5-0 lead. They also had some turret advantages. They had themselves a 5,000 gold lead.
Yeah.
It was a lot scarier. CLG, although they've got themselves a lead, although they're 1,000 gold up, it's not quite as comfortable. They're not sitting in a place where they feel like they're just in complete control of the game, so you've got to maintain respect, because if FlyQuest are given the opportunity to come back into this game, one big team fight, and all of a sudden things shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, FlyQuest were on pace to perfect game them. They have been controlling the enemy's jungle. They had found a lot of kills, and like you said, they found turrets. CLG still lacking in the turrets, so if this Rift Herald is able to finish off this top turret, they will actually probably be able to equalize the gold. And there's no help up here, so Cho'Gath is going to have to back off this turret.
Yeah, Fallen Bandit knows there's not much of a way to stabilize against this one. He'll throw down the Rupture to just buy an extra half a second, but it's not going to do a ton. And FlyQuest grabbing themselves turret number 1 brings us, honestly, just back up to even in terms of gold. Couple hundred for CLG, but a couple hundred gold, some control wards, Mark. That's not going to buy you a big item, make a huge difference.
No, absolutely not. And they're going to kind of potentially dive Fallen Bandit here. Did not know JJ was on his way up. Airy following closely behind. They're actually going to go for a 2-for-1 turret trade here. A nice trade up. Tuesday roamed up to kind of protect Fallen Bandit from the potential dive, but that doesn't stop them from getting the objective. Otto's going to push in the bot wave, but they're definitely behind on this play. And this is why we always compliment FlyQuest so highly, is a lot of the advantages that they find in the games are not just based off kills, it's based off smart macro play and vision control.
Yeah, I really like that decision from FlyQuest, getting themselves back to a point where they feel that they have agency in the game, where they're the ones who can make the plays. The turret lead is one way to come back into this match, but CLG saying, all right, you got 2 of ours, we're going to take 1 of yours, but we're also going to grab this second Drake. Bring that online so that then turrets and barons and even more Drakes are easier to access later on.
And Mountain Dragon is actually the most feast or famine dragon in the game in terms of its effectiveness. In a game state like this, where it's even gold, even games, no one outscales each other really. Maybe CLG a little bit now with that first Infernal Dragon, but from an even game, it's actually very difficult to make use of the Mountain Dragon if you don't have a split push threat, because you know, Cho'Gath isn't hitting any turrets. Your Ashe and Orianna are not guaranteed to hit any turrets. It's only going to help you then take a Baron down, but you don't know if you're going to have that vision control from an even state. So Mountain Dragon can end up being one of those ones that you don't get to use at all. It's nice to keep it off the enemy's hands, of course, but it's not really extending an advantage for you.
We'll have to see how CLG can try to extend the advantage that they built for themselves through those fight victories they've earned so far. But when you look at the gold, it's actually FlyQuest with the slight lead, despite the 1-5.
And so you would think, oh, well, that would be all concentrated around the junglers because he's 1-0 and 3 versus 2 and 1. But, you know, it's actually Shrimp who's up gold. So Shrimp is not as far behind as you might initially think. It's mostly around the top, mid, and bot lane, where No is much stronger after that split push that he's been developing in the CS lead, as well as the first turret gold. And on the bot side, all those skirmishes going in their favor.
Baron spawning in 30 seconds now as well means there's always the opportunity for that to be a play, but the plays are made in the mid lane, and Tuesday is down before much can be said. The Zac ultimate going to drag FlyQuest back into the turret, but it's too little, it's too late, and FlyQuest were ahead on the play.
And they lose their wave clear here in the mid lane right as Airy and JJ are roaming up. They're doing a great job of following around this action of FlyQuest potentially being able to push down turrets. Looks like CLG are going to react in time to wave clear that one, but it's just buying time for Noah in the top lane, who's now pushing down a Nexus or Inhib turret, excuse me. Not going to be able to take that one. It is going to heal up, so it's one of those things that you see it and you're like, whoa, look at this pressure. But it's like, it's not that big of a deal.
Still, the fact that CLG had a 4-man defense mid while FlyQuest is at the inhibitor turret means they've got to be prepared for these rotations. They will continue to defend the mid lane tier 1, so FlyQuest will not knock down that ever-important turret. You mentioned kind of how much that can matter last game. Well, 2 games ago, I guess, with the first game of the day of Cloud9. But let's take another look at how they caught Tuesday here.
Ooh, wow. They are just hugging the top side of that brush. So that vision cone actually missed them, I believe. So they think that they just cleared out that whole brush. It's safe to walk forward, but just that slight miss angle. And it's actually pretty hard to aim that perfectly as a vision cone to like line it up. So small mistake by OmarGod there gets his mid lane killed.
That was a smooth criminal kind of positioning from FlyQuest too, just being right up against the wall, ready to make the move. I like seeing that one. Now, if you're Tuesday, that's got to be a bit of a tilter. So you hopefully can keep yourself out of those situations here as time goes on. Leandry's Torment and Sorcerer's Shoes for him means he's got plenty of damage if he gets the opportunity to put it down in the fights, but the Rod of Ages fully stacked. The Leandry's Torment onto Keen as well. It's the same build we saw last game. Plenty of health. The resistances, the damage reduction come from the W and the Aftershock. This is not an easy to kill mid lane.
Absolutely not. And it's interesting to see Tuesday going for the Leandrys. You know, there's been so much focus on so many other things. It's sometimes hard to talk about the mid lane item changes that happened, and Leandry's becoming a mostly tank burn focused item and allowing your damage to ramp up as you stay in these fights. It's very likely that these fights extend for a period of time, and there is, like we said, 3.5 tanks basically on the side of FlyQuest Academy. So I like this item pickup by Tuesday, though I would be surprised if people consider this the conventional Orianna build.
Zach charging up the slingshot, goes in, finds his way onto Keen, jerks him right back to the team, and now it's a 1 versus 4. We talked about the Galio tankiness, but it's hard to be tanky enough to survive 4 versus 1.
Yeah, 4-man gank in the mid lane will kill just about anyone. They find that kill onto Keen. They had done a good job with their vision control up on that top side near their own jungle to find that angle for OmarGod to start that one. Now we're going to keep going on to Aery, excuse me.
Aery gets hit by the first stretching strike. There's nothing for him to be pulled back and slammed up against, so he's not able to get the big part of the CC on that, but still under a little bit of threat there. Does get away. CLG controlling the neutral parts of the map right now with the lead that they have for themselves, however small it may be. Now deciding that there's not really a whole lot else to accomplish right now.
That was a cute attempt by OmarGod onto Aery. I like to see that. He doesn't panic flash. Knows there's nothing for his opponent to auto. And they grab that mid turret. Gold lead back in their favor a little bit. Still down, it feels like a little bit of map pressure. It does feel like FlyQuest are often the ones pushing, kind of setting where the action is going to take place. They have the Gnar with the split push pressure, and it feels like mid lane is often pushed in.
It's a much closer game overall, though. I mean, there's no comparing these two games. CLG is putting up a much better performance this time around than they were in the first iteration of this one, and it can honestly still go either way incredibly easy. If you crest the 20-minute mark and you've got less than a 500 gold difference between the teams, and it's this close, well, okay, maybe not a less than 500. It's right about 500.
Yeah.
But either way, when it's this close, the next big play could be what changes it, could be what makes or breaks how this game's going to play.
Yeah, another 3-0 fight at this point in the game, which we've seen a couple of in the previous game, and this one means potentially Baron. And so you're going to have this game explode open. And this is also not, you know, your week 2 CLG Academy where they look like a mess and they're picking Urgot and nothing seems to be working for them. They have beaten Team Liquid Academy and Cloud9, 2 of the top 3 teams in Academy, where we're talking about there's this stark difference between the top and the rest of the league. Yeah. And now they're going toe-to-toe with FlyQuest after needing a bit of a half of a game to wake up. And so I think it's fair to say that CLG is not just going to get completely out-macroed and outplayed in the late game. They're doing a good job keeping up with them.
At the same time, though, remember, there is only 1 spot left in playoffs. So for CLG, yeah, it can feel good to be like, okay, we responded well, we adapted properly, like, we put up a good fight against FlyQuest. But if you don't win, that's still very problematic here in Week 8 as Keen going to be the target here yet again. OmarGod looking to make the kidnap, can't quite find the mark. The Braum on the front line soaking a lot of damage here. 2-man rupture, able to find multiple members of FlyQuest into the shockwave, and that is a fight for CLG. Noah's barely walking away, but OmarGod slams right into the ground with the slingshot, finds that pickup as well. with the enemy jungler dead as well as that top laner, Baron appears to be the call.
And there's been a number of skirmishes now where No has joined into them and does not have Mega Gnar available, and it's beginning to hurt them. They have a much squishier front line if they're not careful about how they start these fights. You saw Shrimp and No basically getting forced back by Tuesday by himself. And without that smite available, they want this Baron.
FlyQuest has to make some kind of a crazy defense here if they want to stop it. Baron going to be taken very low. Instead, CLG decides to turn the root into the damage CC chain onto Keen. He's gone. But can CLG finish this Baron? They still got to deal with the Kog'Maw. They get what they came for, and they get out.
They have that Baron and Power recall. All 5 members going to be able to take that Baron buff. And we said the next 3-for-0 fight was going to decide the game potentially. Well, CLG just won it. They open up onto Keen a little bit as well as Airy, force them back away from the fight so they're not doing any damage. MarkZ does miss that kidnap as the flash comes through, but then watch No and Shrimp on the right, or the right side of your screen. They just get focused down. The Orianna ult destroys their health bars, and this is why they have this kind of conditional tankiness. And Keen was forced away on the left side, so he couldn't get on top of them. He didn't drop his ult to try and save them. And it's just so difficult if the Gnar is not in mega form. He gets dropped too quickly.
And Keen always seems to be in the sights of these guys. CLG seem to be targeting him, and that goes back to one of the oldest philosophies that there is in League of Legends. When you're up against something with a global or a semi-global, go to the global. Because then he can't use it to save somebody else if he's the target.
And it's definitely working out, not picking these side lane fights. They constantly are attacking the mid lane. Keen is a player who, despite how good he's been in Academy and some of his success in the LCS, is sometimes seen as a little bit of a volatile player where when things start going south,
heaven or hell, right?
Yeah, he either plays very solid and consistent or he starts dying all the time.
Airy might find himself dying here. Shockwave finds the mark, and Tuesday is going to assassinate that enemy AD carry. Shrimp in the back lines now is not exactly where he wants to be, simply because of the fact that he is that more warrior-style Jarvan. He can't survive against these guys for a very long time. Bottom side, Otto trying to do what he can up against this enemy team. Keen moves forward to stop him. He's got Fallen Bandit right behind him, though, so FlyQuest not really able to make a play onto this one just yet. They're being pressured under 2 different inhibitor turrets now. 3 members of CLG in the mid lane, 2 in the bottom lane. Phil on the front line, exactly where an Alistar wants to be.
Blue buff.
Shrimp not exactly where you'd like to see him at this point in time. Blue turret goes down, as you can see there on your screen. Shrimp coming in from behind. There's your Galio ulti. This might be what FlyQuest is looking for, but the counterattack comes through and CLG is able to find the kill onto Shrimp first. A lot of damage going to be poured into Keen. It's a double kill for Tuesday, and CLG is going for the jugular here today. MarkZ forced back as Airy is once again caught out and brought down. A killing spree for Otto. 14-2. For CLG Academy. They got 2 different inhibitors about to drop, and they're marching towards the Nexus.
Yeah, that looks like it's going to be game here. CLG Academy bounced back in a big way from the game 1, I guess you could call it remake. They go 2-15 in kills, completely play the game differently, adapt very well while keeping the draft the exact same, showing they know what went wrong and how to fix it this time around.
Another sub 30-minute game today. The wins are happening decisively. They're happening just so quick once these teams get an advantage. And Mark, we called it, man. Next 3-for-0 fight decides the game. Sure enough, the game ends 5 minutes later.
And it's crazy to think that, you know, this would have been a sub 30-minute game in the first version of it when it was a nearly perfect game going on for FlyQuest. But this time around, boom, CLG reacts. They make sure they don't fall behind to the pressure of Jarvan early on. They make some ganks in the mid lane. Their dragon fight is played properly this time. They can match the TPs. And then they play the game out very well from there.
And let's go ahead and just jump right into some of those plays that CLG made this work with. You can see 11 minutes, 30 seconds into the game, CLG have a 3-for-0 in the bottom lane that really starts them off there on the right foot.
And this is another one of those fights where we talked about, got to be concerned about the target they're picking because they go on to JJ, they exhaust him, maybe a little excessive, the Galio ult's coming in, but then they do a good job of refocusing. MarkZ actually pulls in the bot lane to get Airy to have to flash out and play defensively, and then Shrimp overextends trying to pop that passive. He does not have a passive of his own, so he dies, and then when the teleports came in, it's already a 4v3. Fallen Bandits, like you said, also comes in a little bit quicker, as well as the fact that he's just tankier than a mini-Gnar, so he's able to get involved in that fight, cut off a bit of the escape path there, and get another kill onto Keen, which then results in their first Infernal Dragon, and uh-oh, it's a totally different game.
The exact opposite of the Infernal Drake fight from the first time around. And when you start strong, you have the ability to finish strong. Here's another look at the final fight of the game where CLG quickly and decisively closed things out in the enemy base.
And this is a little bit of a last stand attempt here by FlyQuest. I don't know what Shrimp was doing blue buff, but hey, it gave him a flank potentially. Misses the knock-up onto Tuesday, who is then able to flash out of the Jarvan damage and the knock-up by Galio. So as well as the fact that the bot lane of CLG was taking the bot inhibitor turret so they can rotate up, and suddenly they have their front line reestablished. They're able to focus down the members of FlyQuest, and then, hey, we have Baron buff and we just won a fight right outside your inhibitor in the mid lane. Let's go end the game.
And like we were talking about, that means CLG's hopes for that 4th spot are still alive and kicking. This team now with an even win-loss record still has an opportunity to go for the postseason.
And we kept talking about how, like, oh man, these guys need to win to show that they deserve to be there. It's like you beat the number 1, 2, and 3 team consecutively, basically. I think they kind of deserve to make it into the playoffs now if they can actually close this out with their last 2 games next week. I mean, it's a crazy run that they're on.
Well, that's definitely going to be what is their challenge during this last week of regular play, right? They've proved that they can beat the best. Now you've just got to make sure you don't trip up during that final sprint. Make sure you can win just as much as you can.
And that's you know, what separates the best teams, really, because FlyQuest doesn't drop games to teams below them, aside from maybe Team Liquid and C9, because when those guys are on point, they're crazy good, obviously. And FlyQuest here started this game really strong. They were showing that, you know, they understood what they want to do with their comp, but CLG also showing that they're no slouch either, and that's why I'm kind of excited to see them in a best-of-5 series, because that adaptation looked fantastic to me.
The adaptation was great. CLG managed to play the game well enough to earn their victory here today. 2 games down, but we're just getting started. Coming up next, we'll see if Clutch Gaming can keep their own playoff